A speedrun is a playthrough of a video game performed with the intention of completing a goal as fast as possible. Most often to complete the game. Speedruns may cover a whole game or a selected part and may impose additional requirements beyond quick completion. They are mainly attempted for the purposes of entertainment and competition. Commonly, speedruns are recorded by the players who make them. Players use these recordings for entertainment and to verify the completion time. The use of speedruns as entertainment stems from their conception by game enthusiasts, who would often compare each other's playing skills via videos exchanged over the internet. As speedruns grew more competitive, however, enthusiasts often demanded more proper speedrun recordings, so that anyone could verify that a playthrough went by the implicit or specific speedrun rules it claimed to follow. This verifiability is needed to count a speedrun as an official attempt to beat any previous records. In order to reach the highest possible quality of play in a speedrun, the player usually has to reason about the game differently from the way that many ordinary players might. Speedruns are usually planned out carefully before they are attempted, because the separate areas in which gameplay takes place are often complex and demand skillful play to complete quickly. Speedrun players often exploit imperfectly designed game mechanics to do unexpected and unusual things that save time. Although game mechanics are usually vastly different between games, they often share common traits in the speedrunning context, such as having opportunities to disjoin the common sequence of events in a game and skip entire parts of it, often called sequence breaking, and having programming mistakes, or glitches, that a skillful speedrun player can use to his or her advantage. Some games are considered to be particularly suited to speedrunning and have online communities dedicated to them, which can provide an active platform for discussing, publishing and improving speedruns. Although speedrunning originally encompassed a small community of enthusiasts sharing their speedrun attempts online, it has since become a phenomenon that involves several active websites and an increasingly expansive assortment of speedrun videos that are freely and widely circulated on the internet. Common procedures and preparation. There are several important things that one needs to keep in mind during the making of a speedrun. These pertain to how good one is at playing the game, which primarily means that the player must be competent at using the gameplay mechanics, and must instinctively know the workings of the in-game physics and any techniques or tricks that can be used to one's advantage. Secondly, good knowledge of the game and the events that occur within it are crucial, as one needs to know exactly what to expect during a run through the game, and also realize the optimal method to do so. Additionally, runners require perseverance, as it is quite difficult to be able to do a run correctly in a single attempt. As it requires some degree of luck to be able to perform all important events to a satisfactory degree, runners will usually have to simply try again constantly until they are all done right in the same recording. The requirement to do this depends on whether the runner is trying to beat another record. When attempting to do so, making mistakes could annul one's chances of doing so. For some speedruns records, especially those of popular games such as Quake or some games from the Metroid series, years of intensive competition have brought about very high-quality standards. Runners therefore practice intensively to attain the ability to play at such a high level of skill. In some cases, internet communities that relate to speedrunning are able to keep active improvement on a particular speedrun going for years. As mentioned, the actual recording of a run is preceded by a research phase. The things a runner can do during this phase pertain to finding out possible ways to save time, most of which are likely specific to the particular game under consideration. Naturally, it must be known beforehand that there is a certain route through the game that will yield a fast time. Such a route can describe various things, including a number of abilities that the game's character must obtain or avoid, which enemies to gain experience points from, or which levels to play. The devised routes can be highly creative and may include doing things that are out of ordinary or intended play style. It is not uncommon for routes to even skip parts of regular gameplay in events known as sequence breaking, sometimes through the use of programming errors that can work to the runner's advantage. Both these things pertain to route planning, the most important preparation work. Route planning before one begins creating a speedrun, it is of importance that the most feasible route that leads to the completion of the game be determined. A route, in this context, is a course of action by which to get from one point in the game to another. It could cover only a single level, or the entire game in general. The need for determining such a route stems from the complexity of the separate areas in which the gameplay takes place. Runners must ensure that, in order to be as fast as possible, they know which actions to take in which order to avoid having to do unnecessary things. If one does not take the game's flow of events into proper consideration, the resulting speedrun may be tainted by requirements such as having to pass through more levels, having to use less effective means of fighting enemy characters, or having to level up more. The amount of planning per section of a game differs. For example, extensive planning is required to find the best possible method for passing a level that contains a lot of traps or enemy characters, more so than levels in which most such obstacles are optional and can be easily avoided. Even in games in which the levels seem fairly straightforward, it is often required that a route be taken that ensures some kind of advantage, such as a certain degree of safety or the possibility of picking up beneficial items or weapons along the way. An optimal route is designed not only to be fast, but also to take into account the effect it might have on other resources that might affect later levels. Some games lend themselves to this better than others. Generally, non-linear games will have more branches of possibilities, as the lack of a fixed sequence of events causes there to be many choices that the player can make that require extensive research to appraise. Sequence breaking. During the making of a route, it sometimes becomes apparent that some of the goals in the game do not need to be achieved for completion. While the route itself pertains mostly to the way levels or their segments are passed, additional elements of the game that may be seen as integral to its natural or artistic flow, or the continuity of its gameplay, may sometimes be avoided partially or entirely. Such elements include cutscenes that need to be watched before the player can progress, items that the player needs to possess in order to continue to a next stage, or even entire parts of the gameplay that may convey a part of the game's plot or subplot. Skipping a part of the game in such a fashion that it can be described as a disjunction with the game's intent or common sequence of events, is referred to as sequence breaking. The term sequence break was first used in 2003 in an online discussion forum thread concerning the Nintendo GameCube game Metroid Prime. This thread was called Gravity Suit and Ice Beam before the deuce. Using the since then common X before Y notation in the nomenclature of speedrunning. The deuce, a fictional creature in the Metroid series, was designed to be a mandatory boss before the Gravity Suit and Ice Beam could be obtained, hence the novelty of bypassing the boss while still obtaining the items. The author of the thread was Stephen Banks, who reported to have successfully performed this sequence break on January 18, 2003, after the possibility of such an act was suggested by Kip. Banks posted his findings about the act being possible on the Metroid Prime message board on GameFAQs in a thread which attracted a number of interested gamers. The gamers fast became a separate community and strove to accomplish more and better feats in the game. It is currently assumed that the term, as used in this context, was first used by a person known online as SOL Flare in this thread on February 5, 2003. Since its initial discovery, sequence breaking has become an integral part of speedrunning and has been applied to many other games. Glitch usage. An example of sequence breaking as a result of a glitch can be found in the 16-star run of Super Mario 64. In this game, the protagonist, Mario, normally needs to collect at least 70 of the 120 power stars before he is allowed to play the final level and challenge the antagonist, Bowser, for a final time, but a glitch makes it possible for a runner to access that level with only 16 stars. More specifically, with the right kind of movement, the runner is able to pass through the boundary of a wall by pushing into it in a certain way while holding on to MIPS, an NPC. Since then, similar tricks have been found to complete the game without collecting any stars. While some speedrun rules require that the skipping of such events be avoided, it is often desirable connate with the act of route planning to make full use of such possibilities. Websites, such as Speedemos Archive and their associated wiki constitute that a glitch run falls under its own category of glitch run, as opposed to a run without glitches, allowing for multiple categories. Thus is it possible for two separate times for a 100% speedrun of a game, a 100% speedrun utilizing glitches, and one without using them, forcing the player to complete the game in a standard fashion. It is agreed upon that glitches, which are the fault of the game's programmers and not the player, are legitimate and allowed. However, cheating or using cheat devices are not accepted, even if the cheat is a glitch from something such as improperly inserting the cartridge. There are some glitches in video games which allow the player to become invincible to enemies by delaying death, and it can also result in skipping some stages. The Oddworld series has been known for this type of glitch. Oddworld, Absidice has the glitch that can skip Paramonia and Scribania, which is not meant to happen for a general player of the game. There is also a similar glitch in Oddworld, New and Tasty, but only Scribania can be skipped. There is no glitch that can delay death in Oddworld, Abe's Exodus, but there is a glitch that can skip everything in the entire FICO depot, which would have resulted in going through Slig Barracks, Boneworks and the FICO office. This is done using an auto-turn delay glitch at the start of the stage, which involves delaying Abe's ledge hoisting animation and using it at a further ledge in the game. Games from the Grand Theft Auto series also have an invincibility glitch too. Tool assistance. While it is typical of generic speedruns, as described in the opening paragraph, to be recordings of skilled playing of the game, there is one particular branch of the phenomenon called tool-assisted speedrunning, which removes the need for the recording to be devised by typical means and instead allows authors to use tools to aid their playing. Essentially, these tools can be anything that eases the gameplay and thus improves the final result. Some prime examples, commonly provided by the use of an emulator, include the usage of save states that allow the author to go back in time and revise mistakes, and programs that read variables from the game's memory, giving the player information not normally available to them, such as enemy attack patterns. One common requirement of tool-assisted speedrunning, stemming directly from the abilities that said tools provide, is the attainment of perfection. The knowledge that it is not possible, by current abilities, to record the speedrun in any way that would warrant a lower completion time. The practical result is that human limitations, such as skill and reflex, are no longer an issue in the creation of a run. Tool-assisted runs have lower completion times than their unassisted equivalents. It has been argued by members of Taz Videos, a major tool-assisted speedrun community, that the runs produced by them could be considered a form of art, claiming that they significantly hold creativity, variability, surprising outcomes, and speed, which makes them beautiful to watch. Additionally, these members have outlined the qualities that, according to them, make a tool-assisted run entertaining. They should be interesting to watch, they should surprise the viewer, and they must depict a very high level of play. When a new run is submitted to the site, it first gets voted on by the site's members to assess whether it is suitable for publication. In case a run is found to be substandard, it is rejected. The usage of tools to aid the player is mostly forbidden in regular speedrunning, and it is for this reason that tool assistance is seen as controversial by some. When a tool-assisted speedrun of Super Mario Bros. 3 was released in mid-2003 by an anonymous speedrunner using the nickname Morimoto, its incredible quality of play became a phenomenon. Since few people knew how the video was made, it was widely believed that it was played in real time by an extremely skilled player. When Morimoto detailed the making of the run on his website, many felt deceived and turned to criticizing the video's illegitimacy instead. In 2006, Joel Aliliwoma, the webmaster of Taz Videos, had been quoted as saying 2 years ago, "I fought against claims of cheating and other bad-mouthing. Today, although I still see some people who hate the movies and consider them cheating, I see more people who recognize the value of both types of speedruns." Another point of criticism is that a properly executed tool-assisted speedrun may disillusion runners from making an unassisted version. Segmented speedruns. Another phenomenon of speedruns exists, called segmented speedruns. These differ from single-segment speedruns in that, unlike single-segment, which are played and recorded entirely in one sitting, segmented speedruns are speedruns that are attempted in several non-consecutive pieces or segments from various save points. The advantage of segmented speedruns is that one can attempt a segment multiple times until it is perfected completely, and group the best segments into the final result. This also allows for one to use dangerous or unreliable tricks that may be otherwise crippling in a single segmented speedrun. Because of this, segmented speedruns are often ranked separately from single segmented ones. Softlocks. A softlock is an occurrence during the speedrunning of a video game in which the events of a game are triggered in an order unintended by the developer, resulting in making further progress impossible. This impediment of progress is a result of a game script being broken due to events being performed in an incorrect order. For example, in Bloodborne on the PlayStation 4, it is possible to skip a large portion of the game from the beginning, from Central Haunam to the Forbidden Woods. If upon doing so the player activates the moon phases in the unintended order, no further progress can be made. This bug has been removed as of Software Update 1.03. Completion. Speedruns are further categorized into various levels of completion, or how thoroughly a game is completed, which are as follows. Any percent, or fastest completion, refers to completing the game as quickly as possible, and can often involve sequence breaking. Any percent is the most common category, as it has the least amount of restrictions on what you can and cannot do. 100%, or full completion, requires the player to complete the game to its fullest. This often includes collecting all key items or upgrades, finding all secret features, or anything else that may be deemed important. Specific requirements for a 100% speedrun are different depending on the game. Low percent, or minimalist completion, requires the player to complete the game by obtaining the least amount of key items or upgrades possible. If the fastest way to complete the game already involves the player picking up the least amount of key items or upgrades, a low percent category may not exist for that game's speedruns. As with the 100%, low percent speedruns have requirements that vary from game to game. In addition, there can be game-specific categories that change how much of the game must be completed. These categories usually include completing or avoiding specific aspects of the game and/or not allowing certain glitches or game exploits to be used in the run. A good example of this would be the Medallion Streels category in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This category requires the runner to beat all major levels in the game and restricts some of the glitches that can be performed. In Donkey Kong Country 3, there is a water percent run which constitutes collecting every DK coin in the game, which requires the player to collect every bear coin to access the Lost World, but does not require a player to actually 100% the game and ignore the banana birds. History. Historically, speedruns have been performed by members of online communities pertaining to video games in general. When the activity became popular enough to exceed to subculture, the first sites dedicated to speedrunning started appearing, usually specializing in just one or a few games. Some of these sites have sustained activity for a long time, sometimes even up to today, providing coverage of its members' achievements and serving as a platform for related discussions. Compit December 1993 saw the release of id Software's Doom. Among some of its major features, like at the time very sophisticated 3D graphics, LAN and internet-based multiplayer support, and user modification possibilities, it also gave the players the ability to record demo files of their playthrough. This particular feature was first picked up by Christina Strunoff-Norman in January 1994 when she launched the LMP Hall of Fame website. This site was, however, fast followed up by the Doom honorific titles, launched in May 1994 by Frank Stajano, which introduced the first serious competition between players. This site, designed around a notion of earning titles by successfully recording a particular type of demo on one of the predetermined maps in the IWADs, would create the basis for all Doom demo sites that would follow. These so-called exams became very popular as the player had to earn each title by sending in a demo of the feat to one of the site's judges to justify his application. Doom 2, Hell on Earth was released in October 1994, and the DHT conformed to the new editions as well as the new Doom version releases. At the height of its popularity, the DHT had many different categories and playing styles. For example, playing with only the in-game fists and pistol, while killing all monsters on a map, became known as Tyson Mode, named after the heavyweight boxer and former champion Mike Tyson. Pacifist Mode was playing without intentionally harming any monsters. Each category had easy, medium, and hard difficulty maps for players to get randomly chosen for. As an authentication method to prevent players from submitting demos made by other people, it was required that they performed a distinct dance during their demo. With such varied categories, the DHT was appealing to a diverse group of players. However, the DHT had trouble retaining a permanent internet location. This, combined with the constantly changing rules and the diminished importance of most of the titles, caused public interest to wane as the years went by. In November 1994, the definitive installment Doom speedrunning scene, in the form of the Compet.N website, was launched. Its creator, Simon Widlake, intended the site to be a record scoreboard for a variety of Doom-related achievements, but unlike its predecessors, they were all based on the idea of fast completion, thus making it the first actual speedrunning site. Players were required to run through Doom's levels as fast as humanly possible in order to retain a spot on the constantly updated Compet.N scoreboards, leading to demo material gradually amounting to hundreds of hours of recorded gameplay. Like the Doom honorific titles, this site experienced multiple location changes over time. It was hosted on the Simtel servers for a while, before Istvan Pataki took over as maintainer and moved the site to a now-defunct FTP server of the Technical University of Budapest. From there on, since early 1998, it has been administered by Adam Hogai, who was maintaining the site, but left around 2007 without a notice. In 2012, Compet.N players Vonimir FX Bua 3/4 Anya took over maintaining the site and recreated new database for WADS and PWADS. It is currently located at http://www.doom.com.h/compet-n. As of November 2007, Compet.N contains a total amount of 6072 demos, accounting for a total time of 462 hours, 8 minutes and 20 seconds. As of January 2012, Compet.N contains a total amount of 9122 demos, accounting for a total time of 31 days, 5 hours, 41 minutes and 47 seconds. Speedruns archive equals. Following the success of the Doom speedrunning community, people first started recording demos of Quake playthroughs when it was released in June 1996 and sharing them with others on the Demos directory and Simtel's Quake file hierarchy. There were two distinct kinds of demos, those in which the player killed all monsters and found all secrets on the map, and those in which the player ignored these goals in order to finish the level as fast as possible. All levels were, at that time, recorded solely on the Nightmare difficulty level, the highest in the game. In April 1997, Nolan Radix Flug first started the Nightmare Speedruns website to keep track of the fastest demos. In June that same year, the first Quake Done Quick project was finalized. Quake Done Quick, unlike the conventional record demos, featured a full playthrough of the game, carrying over one level's finishing statistics to the next. The project members ended up making a movie in which the entire game is finished on Nightmare difficulty in 0, 19 and 49 seconds. It was a collection of the best runs that the members of the site had been made thus far, and at that time, there was no other run that came close. The run was reconstructed so that it could be also viewed from a third-person perspective, which gained it its machinima status. It received widespread attention from gaming magazines, being distributed as part of the free CDs that they came with. This popularized speedrunning for a much larger audience than before and attracted many newcomers. Not all of those newcomers agreed with the old-timers' standard that runs should be made on the hardest possible skill level. Thus, in August 1997 Uadib's Quake page came to be, run by Gunam Uadib Ondramo and specializing in easy difficulty runs. 1 month after that, the Quake Done Quick movie was superseded by a new movie called Quake Done Quicker, on September 14, 1997, which shortened the game's fastest playthrough to 0, 16 and 35 seconds. In April 1998, Flug and Mo merged their pages, thus creating the Speed Demos archive, which, as of 2007, is still the dominant community for Quake speedrunning and also acts as repository for demos, maps, statistics and software pertaining to the practice. Ever since its creation, a large variety of tricks have been discovered in Quake's physics. Despite being released as early as 1996, Quake has steadily remained popular with its players, who subsequently released the Quake Done Quick with a Vengeance movie on September 13, 2000, which featured a complete run through Quake in 0, 12 and 23 seconds. Primarily tricks that had not been used in both its predecessors allowed for this improvement, as the run's manual states that it makes use of every known trick, including unrestricted bunny hopping, to represent the state-of-the-art in nightmare running. As of September 2014, Speed Demos archive can be found at the web address http://speeddemosarchive.com/ and contains a total amount of 9535 demos, accounting for a total time of over 250 hours. In December 2011 a new run was produced and called Quake Done Quickest. The improvements that were made resulted in a time of 0, 11 and 29 seconds for the entire game, an improvement of 54 seconds over Quake Done Quick with a Vengeance. Metroid 2002 released in August 1986, Metroid was one of the earliest games to introduce special rewards for fast completion times. As is the case for the rest of the games in the series, highly non-linear gameplay makes it possible for runners to search extensively for different routes towards the end of the game. In particular, the ability to perform sequence breaking has been researched thoroughly, leading to the discovery of ways to complete the games while obtaining only a small percentage of items. Prior to the inception of Metroid speedrunning there were special websites which documented these so-called low percentage completion possibilities. The first game to be exceedingly popular with the speedrunning audience was Super Metroid, released in 1994, which proved to lend itself to fast completion purposes very well. It featured a physics system that allowed for a wide array of skills for mobility, like wall jumping, or the sheer nespark, allowing players to skip over large areas of the game, or play through the game in different manners based on how well they can perform these tricks in contextual situations. Additionally, it had the same non-linear gameplay as its predecessors. Due to the way the game was laid out, several different run types or tiers that incorporate different completion percentages have been performed. One type of run is the maximum or 100% run, in which all items in the game are obtained. Speedruns which focus solely on finishing the game as fast as possible with no other prerequisites are described as any percent runs. Runs in which as few items as possible are obtained, slowing down the player's progress due to the need to avoid as many items as possible, have also been made. Such runs are also referred to as low percent runs. As the Internet became more available to the general public, groups of players started collaborating on message boards to discuss these tricks with one another in what became a community based on playing the game speedily. The first Metroid community that was created for the purpose of fast completion was Metroid Prime Discoveries, created and led by Jean-Sébastien Zell Dubois. Rather than being a site that focused on speedrunning, it was dedicated to documenting the possibilities of sequence breaking in the game Metroid Prime. When the interest arose to begin the documentation of other games in the series, however, the new site Metroid 2002 was created by Nathan Nate Jank in August 2003. Initially, the only incentive was to document the two Metroid games released in 2002 Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion but this changed when Nathan was asked to take all content of Metroid Online another site that had been developed at that time and contained sequence-breaking documentation, a message board, and a 1% Metroid Fusion and relaunch Metroid 2002 as the one resource for Metroid Prime sequence-breaking info. This relaunch happened less than 2 weeks after the proposition and came to be in November. Ever since, it has been the central repository for everything related to speedrunning the Metroid series. It was also in November 2003 that Metroid speedrunning reached its peak, after Nolan Flug released his 100% run of Metroid Prime, in which he finished the entire game in 1 hour, 37 minutes. Since it was featured in the games section of Slashdot, it gained widespread attention. Publications in numerous different languages ran stories on the run, and topics about the run were made on gaming message boards around the world. The first segment of his run was being downloaded over 5,000 times a day at the peak of its popularity. The Metroid 2002 IRC channel was flooded with people who had heard about the run and wanted to know more about it, fast dwarfing the original population, and its message board saw its member count double in size the month following the run's release. As a result of the popularity of this run, it was decided that in order to best serve the growing bandwidth consumption, Metroid 2002 would have to merge its array of videos with Speedruns archive, which was at the time being provided nearly limitless server capacity for their runs on the Internet Archive. As of August 2015, the best completion time for the North American version of Metroid Prime is 53 minutes by T3. The best 100% time has been reduced by Miles SMB to 1 hour 13 minutes, making Bartender Sparky S and MPZOIDS runs obsolete. Tas videos. It was in early 1999 that the term tool-assisted speedrun was first coined, during the early days of Doom speedrunning, although they were also called built demos, in accordance with the demo terminology. Players first started recording these special demos when Andy Orrick and Kempling released a modified version of the Doom source code that made it possible to record demos in slow motion and in several sessions. A couple of months afterwards, in June 1999, the first site made for the purpose of sharing these demos, aptly called Tools Assisted Speedruns, was opened by Esko Koskima, Piotr Joblom and Jonathan Dunmer. Like other such communities, the maintainers of the site stressed the fact that their demos were for entertainment purposes rather than skill competitions, although the attempt to have the fastest time possible with tools itself became a competition as well. The site became a success, updating usually several times a week with demos recorded by its maintainers and submitted by its readers. The site was active until August 10, 2001, at which point a news message was posted to state that the site would cease its regular updates and act as archive from then on. The popularity of Doom tool-assisted speedrunning has dwindled since then. In mid-2003, an anonymous speedrunner using the nickname Morimoto released a video in which he played through Super Mario Bros. 3 with an unprecedented level of skill. He beat the entire game in just over 11 minutes without making a single mistake, and managed to accumulate 99 one-ups throughout levels during which he had to wait. In addition, he put himself in dangerous situations over and over, only to escape them without sustaining any damage. Although it was widely believed that the video was made by an extremely skilled player, it was actually the first tool-assisted speedrun made with a special emulator to generate widespread interest. When Morimoto detailed the making of the run on his website, many felt deceived and turned to criticizing the video's illegitimacy instead. The knowledge that the video was constructed through tedious and careful selective replaying also raised some questions about the authenticity of video game replays. After all, if it is practically impossible to tell the videos of both kinds apart, one cannot possibly know whether a run was made with or without the use of a special emulator. It was even feared that this fact would cause the downfall of competitive speedrunning. Neither the Speedruns archive nor Metroid 2002 have ever published runs that were known to be made with a special emulator. Nolan Flug, the former webmaster of Speedruns archive, has been quoted as saying, "My basic thought is don't like them, haven't made them, don't watch them," when asked for his opinion on the subject. Thus, in late 2003, the first public website that served tool-assisted speedrun videos from multiple authors, Tas Videos, was created. It was originally created by Joel Biscuit Alilioma for the purpose of showcasing, sharing and discussing speedruns made with special emulators. At first, the site only held videos of Nintendo games, in part due to the fact that the only emulator suitable for this specialist purpose was, at that time, the Fantasia NES emulator. Besides just serving the speedrun recordings in the emulator's original format, the site also held AVI files, which were made available using the BitTorrent protocol. As of September 2015, it holds 2936 complete speedruns. See also: List of video games notable for speedrunning. Electronic sports a Euro video gaming as competitive sports. Time attack a Euro a mode in which a player attempts to finish a portion of a game as fast as possible. Notes. References. External links. These external resources are sites that specialize in speedrunning, and are therefore locations for further research on the subject. Among the listed sites are communities that have been created so that players of video games may compete against each other for fast times and high scores. Speedruns archive a Euro speedrunning repository and community. Speedrun.com a Euro speedrunning repository and community. European Speedster Assembly a Euro official homepage for the Ludendy charity speedrunning marathon. Collection of speedrun videos at the Internet Archive. TAS Videos a Euro community aimed at creating tool-assisted speedruns.